Super Mario 64 released June 23, 1996, and was a landmark title for 3D gaming as a whole, introducing to the world how you can transition 2D side-scrolling platformer gameplay into an immersive 3D adventure. It would go on to define a whole generation of gaming, with many 3D games afterwards either using it as the template for their own creation, or the outline to try and rip off and profit off of. For being a very influential game, you would be surprised to find that the official development cycle of the game only lasted for a little under 2 years, from September 7th, 1994 to May 20th, 1996. But what exactly happened in that 2-year time span? Before we get into the whole confusing rabbit hole of personalized copies and Wario apparitions, let's set ourselves up with a semi-official Super Mario 64 development timeline. I say semi-official because the history behind this game's development is a confusing spaghetti mess, and it's entirely possible my research is either currently incorrect at the time of writing or will become outdated as time goes on and players discover more. I should also note that I am being thorough with this. A lot of the information I share in this part of the video will be from Mario 64's page on the Cutting Room Floor website, but I've been duped with using information like this in the past, aka the Uncle Kong incident, so I've made sure to comb through all of their sources along with a bit of research separate from what they share to make sure all of the information that I present to you is as exact as I can confirm it to be. In the early 90s, Shigeru Miyamoto started visualizing a potential 3-dimensional Super Mario Bros. Game that would utilize the Super Nintendo's Super FX chip, the same hardware used to produce the graphics in games like Star Fox. Rumors around the time stated that the game would have been called Super Mario FX, but this was later debunked as simply being an internal codename for the FX chip itself. It wasn't long into the development of this theoretical Super Nintendo 3D Mario game before it was scrapped, as Miyamoto set his eyes upon remaking it from scratch on the next Nintendo console, the Nintendo 64, then called the Nintendo Ultra 64. Since the game started development in the latter half of '94, there's not too much to actually go off of in terms of what happened in that year. The Mario All-Stars 20th anniversary release included a Mario history booklet, which showed some early concept art and translated developer notes. The concept art that seemed to have made it into the final game in some way or another is Mario running away from a boulder, potentially being the basis for Hazy Maze Cave's Rolling Rocks, Mario in a room filling with water, which although doesn't appear in the game directly, could have led to the multiple times of the game where Mario deals with changing water levels, such as Drain the Castle Moat or Wet Dry World. And finally, concept art depicting Mario using a bomb with a timer. Again, this one doesn't one-to-one match up with anything in the game, but there are multiple times where you can pick up bombs and use them against enemies, albeit without a timer. In 1996, a couple Japanese game guides had interviews, one with just Miyamoto himself, and the other was a developer roundtable consisting of Miyamoto and, be prepared I could mispronounce all these names, Takashi Tezuka, Yoshiaki Koizumi, Hajime Yajima, Yasunari Nishida, and Yoshinori Tanimoto. In the interview, it was revealed that early on, Mario was set to have animations done with mocap, motion capture, but this was changed to hand-drawn animations, likely for artistic reasons, but it's never made explicitly clear. Luigi and Yoshi were also planned early on, but were removed for different reasons. Yoshi originally had an event tied to him that the developers weren't happy with, but instead of completely trashing the model they made of him, they put him on the top of the castle at the end of the game to give the players a bit of a bonus. Luigi, on the other hand, got removed due to memory issues. Whether that meant issues with a second player or swapping player models is unclear, but given in the same interview Miyamoto said that an early version of the game had both Mario and Luigi running around a test world, it can be assumed it was for multiplayer purposes. Editor's note, it was also found during the research of this video some footage of this early multiplayer world in the background of some Space World footage, so yeah, probably for that. And in terms of other miscellaneous planned things that were removed really early on, there are over 50 of Mario's animations that got cut, including one of him throwing Mips the rabbit by his ears, and a bunch of smaller toys and tools, said Yoshiaki Koizumi, that would have included things like balls and cars. Also, as a side note, I highly recommend reading the TCRF, the Cutting Room Floor, pages on Mario 64. There is a lot of in-depth technical stuff I can't share here or just don't want to for simplicity's sake, but if you think Mario 64 history is so cool, like me, go check it out, as this video wouldn't be nearly as well researched without them laying the foundation out for me, so thank you again to the guys who run that website. Despite being its second year in development, not much happened in 95 that we can pick apart until October, other than the creation and updates of inner systems and models, but again, that's all technical stuff. In October, however, there exists footage of two slightly different early test builds, ones that predate the infamous Space World 95 demo. These two demos seem to be very similar aside from one small detail, that being a differing texture for Mario's health. I won't go over everything that these demos do differently than future versions, but I'll highlight a few of the visual changes. Mario's model has harsher shading on the textures, making him contrast a bit more against the levels themselves. The HUD is noticeably different to the final game, showing different textures for nearly every element. The title and game over screens are more stripped back, and finally many parts of the levels themselves are different to other builds. The most interesting change is how what's shown of Cool Mountain is almost completely different from what we get in the final game. The slide in the level is an early version of the one found on Tall Mountain, the area at the base of the mountain where the Mama Penguin lives is entirely different, and where you would exit out of a log cabin in the final game is instead a strange stone monument. Take a good look at this castle interior, by the way, as a lot of attempts at beta recreations and the other weird projects like to highlight the usage of this version of it, and also I just think it looks neat. November 1995 rolls around and we have the Nintendo Space World event. Space World, formerly known as Shoshinkai, was a yearly trade show hosted by Nintendo from 1989 to 2001, and served as a way for Nintendo to share their projects that were early in development. One such project was Super Mario 64 with the now infamous Space World 95 demo. Like the demo predating it, a lot of the design elements presented here are very different to the final game, such as the level layouts and HUD, although there are a few noticeable differences between the October build and this one, such as the inclusion of a minimap that is very similar to the one used in Ocarina of Time, and text boxes that appear when the demo is started and when entering the castle. A lot of the new information brought up in this demo comes down to how Mario is controlled and animated, which, let's be honest, would be boring to list out, so let's instead look at the changes in audio. All of Mario's voice lines are from two stock sound libraries, used as placeholders until Charles Martinet could record the iconic voice lines we know now. And this is one of the more well-known differences in these demos, as it's arguably the most jarring. Just as a neat little comparison, here are some of the original audio samples I found within the First Sound library, the Best Service Voice Spectral Volume 1, and their uses in the demos, specifically the sounds Mario made when jumping. On November 22, 1995, Nintendo filed a patent for the Nintendo 64, then called the Ultra 64, which contained a few images from Super Mario 64's beta, which included in-game screenshots of a finalized Peach's castle, a sketch of Tiny Huge Island, and a strange page visualizing a dungeon or room, with no other information. In the 1996 Nintendo Company report, there was a single image of a Mario 64 beta that followed the Space World demo, but predated the inverted HUD demo, which we'll get into in a moment. This single screenshot showcases Mario fighting Bowser in the Dark World. It has the finalized textures for the numbers in the HUD, but they still have their Space World placement. Mario's lighting is complete, but the shadows are also from the Space World demo, and the madmen of TCRF were able to determine this exact screenshot would have been taken somewhere in a build from December 7th and December 16th, 1995. Sometime before March of 1996, there was a build of the game that has the star and the coin counters swapped on the HUD, dubbed the inverted HUD because of it, and the only visual evidence that is known to exist of it is a short clip in a Nintendo 64 trailer. The only other changes the inverted HUD demo has are the removal of the minimap and minor visual tweaks. So here's where the timeline gets a bit confusing. We're approaching E3 time in real time with the new build of the game arriving then. However, there's a lot of information that came out after E3 pertaining to beta builds that existed before E3, so to keep things simple, we're going to go by the beta timeline as opposed to the real-world timeline that this information will have come out, so try not to get too confused by the dates. In June of 1996, UK gaming magazine Computers and Video Games, or CVG, published a multi-page spread on the upcoming Super Mario 64, showing even more screenshots from a build of the game that had even more things that would be changed by the game's final release. The build shown in the magazine, dated as being somewhere in March of 96, follows the trend of being mostly just small texture changes, and the more notable changes feeling like a spot the difference puzzle. The paintings are missing from the mirror room, the pyramid in Shifting Sands land has a square top, and in one of the more confusing pre-release oddities, the mountain on Bob-omb Battlefield has a large spike on top. Okay, breaking away from the timeline for a second, I'm just now realizing there's like almost nothing for Bob-omb Battlefield's beta before this point, other than the supposed river build from the 96 interviews, so there's a good chance the spike's been here since the beginning? I don't know, random thought I had, just neat that this was in the game for a while. In August of 96, the magazine Dengeki Nintendo, or Nintendo Shock, released an issue covering the Nintendo 64's upcoming games, and on the very last page there's evidence of yet another beta build in the form of this single image. Now, what in this single image proves it's from a different beta? The X doesn't disappear when you have 100 stars like it does in previous betas, future betas, or the final game. That's it. Oh, and the model for Mario is his finalized one here, but the X100 thing is more prevalent, so it's dubbed as the X100 Beta, which sounds like an 80s ad. Feel the power of the X100 Beta build. Extreme! I don't know if that's going in the final take. As we get closer to the E3 beta itself, we have more visuals from a version of the game that predates the E3 build. Again, it's mostly minor visual changes, but we're getting closer to the game's official release and can be done with this development timeline and get onto the part of the video most of you are probably more interested in. E3 time, baby, and we have two different versions. You see, at E3, Nintendo had a show floor for Super Mario 64 and kiosks set up for people to play. These kiosks took some time to construct, so they use a slightly older build of the game than the show floor versions, notably still using the early Mario, Star, and Coin HUD elements. This is also when the front of the castle has finally been updated to have the stained glass mural of Princess Peach as opposed to the clock face that had been there since the early demos, along with the interior of the castle being closer to the final game. Just before we reach the show floor E3 build, we have actually a third version of the game that is only documented in the game's manual, dated to have been made somewhere between April 30th and May 5th, placed between the kiosk and show floor E3 builds. Luckily, this is on the smaller side of differences to other versions with a little bit of an outdated HUD icon for the coin, some missing stage elements, and smoke texture being finished. I honestly have no idea how they cranked out 3 slightly different betas between the kiosk, manual, and show floor, but that's 90s video game development for ya. Finally, the E3 show floor beta. At this point, the game is basically done, with the only things differing between this and the retail version being incredibly minute. The camera angle when losing life and Bowser in the Dark World is more dramatic, zooming in closer to Mario when he lands back in the castle. The flooded basement entrance is narrower, with one large arrow rather than 2 smaller ones in the final game. Red coins are larger than regular coins, and snowy trees are slightly taller than regular ones. Not a super exciting beta to cap off the timeline, but hey, the game was almost done, what are you gonna do? And there, the generalized, semi-official Mario 64 beta timeline. Granted, I didn't go into excruciating detail of every single beta build, but there's enough here to build out a rough timeline of the 11 betas that we know of. Oh fuck, I forgot the 2020 leaks. Okay, so in July of 2020, a massive amount of internal data from Nintendo was leaked online, which included a large amount of Super Mario 64's source code. This source code leak led to the discovery of numerous early and unused assets, ranging from really boring stuff like early star names to the model for Luigi himself. So even though it's a very important moment in Mario 64's history, it's hard to say if it should be included in the development history, as even though it was in development at some point, it was cut before seeing the public at all. Also, if I went over everything that got leaked, this section would be even longer, and I want to get into the weird shit. If you've been around the internet a good amount, you're probably somewhat aware of phrases like, every copy of Mario 64 is personalized, or Wario Apparition, L is Real 2401, and if not, well, be prepared for a doozy of a story. In May of 2020, a thread on 4chan's V-board was posted as followed. Every copy of Super Mario 64 is personalized. Nintendo's experimental AI adapts and subtly creates a slightly altered version of the game, tailored specifically for you, appealing to you subconsciously in ways you don't even notice, as well as attempting to mess with you and study how you react to it. Have you ever played someone else's copy of Mario 64? Have you ever felt like something was just a little bit off? That's why, that's how. This is much more than just simple experimentation with procedural generation, however. There are many layers to this, and some of them are more sinister and malicious than others. Super Mario 64 is, at its core, an insidious and evil work of human creation. Now, obviously, this is a load of horse shit, and I'm sad that I can't find the original thread itself to see all the reactions to this obviously stupid story, but we're just gonna have to settle for the screenshot in my imagination. The idea that Nintendo is making advanced AI in 96 is just really dumb, especially since it claims to mess with you and study how you react. Like, why? Why would Nintendo make a malicious AI? An AI in general that changes the game sounds like a fantastic idea, but one that specifically is made with malicious and evil intent? What? Now, personally, I chalk this idea down to people having bad memories and faulty games. It's no secret that a lot of games back in the day would get a bit funky if you messed with the console or the cartridge while the game was running. Coupled with Mario 64 being one of the most popular video games of all time, and nearly everyone having seen the game at some point in their life, it could easily lead to false memories. Some guy online says he remembers an extra 1-up somewhere. A load of people go, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that. It spreads around the internet as some people continue to half-heartedly remember it and others deny it. Boom, conspiracy. Put it away. It's also possible, although unlikely given the relative obscurity of the footage, that the every copy is personalized thought refers to this interview with Shigeru Miyamoto where he says,
the game itself always changes with players playing.
Now, personally, I don't think he meant it in a literal sense, as right before this he says,
now we have got the best hardware, Nintendo 64. We can change the image of game.
Which means?
We can make the quite different game from current game. Like the the game itself always changes with players playing.
When he says the game changes with players playing, he's probably referring to how game design will change to reflect how current players play games, with the advent of 3D gaming now being accessible to everyone. And come on, the man is clearly having a little bit of trouble with getting his thoughts across in English, cut him some slack. But this single post about Mario 64 being personalized was one of the key ingredients to the maelstrom of misinformation we'll get into in a moment. The other ones being Wario Apparition and L is Real. L is Real is a bit easier to explain, so we'll do it first. In the courtyard of Peach's castle is a fountain with a plaque that supposedly reads L is Real 2401. For years, people have been trying to decipher the meaning behind it. Obviously, the L had to stand for Luigi, that's what many assumed, but did the is real mean that he was in the game, or that maybe he had a game on the N64 coming soon, or that these were all delusions of people trying to read incredibly low-quality textures? Like, we know now that Luigi was supposed to be in the game, that he even had a model made, but it's confusing. Why would Nintendo have put a plaque referring to him if they knew he wasn't going to be in the final product? That's where the conspiracy theories come in, or to put in a lighter tone, the urban legends. The 2401 on the plaque refers to the amount of coins needed to unlock Luigi, or maybe the release date of Paper Mario in North America, which was February 5th, 2001, making the 2401 off by 1 day. A lot of different ideas thrown around as to what it could mean, but at the end of the day, none of them were real. Also, most people don't bring this up, but the plaque is also in Ocarina of Time, and Luigi isn't in that game either, and no one's making a fuss about it, so you have L is Real and personalized copies. And as every good recipe goes, we need at least 3 ingredients. At E3 1996, when Nintendo unveiled Super Mario 64, they had a screen set up to demonstrate and tease upcoming games, with the cold open being Charles Martinet as Wario making fun of the audience for thinking Nintendo's offerings would be fun.
You want fun? Wario show you fun.
Notably, it's Wario's head on top of a slightly older version of the hallway to Dire Dire Docks. This is important. This visual became the basis for a meme/creepypasta called the Wario Apparition. Coincidentally, not only did this post originate from 4chan like the personalized one, but it was even posted on the same day. The Wario Apparition was created from the subconscious wishes to see him in Mario 64 that the shared desire caused him to appear as a horrifying half-start in some copies of the game. That image is what it's supposed to look like, but those who encountered it in-game can't even describe what it looked like, as many suffer from memory loss and stroke-like symptoms. If you suspect you're seeing it in-game, it's suggested you shut the console off immediately, because once you give it power by witnessing it, it gains power to begin manifesting itself into your reality. The original post with the image seems to be lost to time, but it's presumably referring to the old E3 cold open. Now, like any good creepypasta or Mario 64 urban legend, it doesn't make much sense if you think about it for more than a few seconds. If most people who encounter him have memory loss and strokes, how is there so much documentation? If he's the combined desire of every Wario fan wanting him in Mario 64, why is he malicious? But also, like any good creepypasta or Mario 64 theory, it got spread around like wildfire online. And once these 3 pieces of secret Mario lore were concocted, a new idea began to spread. If Super Mario 64 leaves players hints at supposed secret content, can change itself to better match the person playing, and even affect that person's subconscious, who knows what else it can do? And thus, the rabbit hole of Mario 64 conspiracies was dug up, starting with this iceberg image detailing a list of anomalies within the game, from most well-known to most obscure. Some of the entries on this can be explained away almost immediately, like the Space World 95 build, while others are a bit more interesting? I'm not going to go over this whole thing though, enough videos on this platform have already ran the gambit of trying to explain the entire iceberg, with my personal recommendation being this video by YouTuber Mishkaz, link in description, or like up there at the top. Probably. I'm hoping YouTube doesn't update. Instead, I'm going to take a closer look at some of the specific things on the iceberg. Maybe the ones that I believe in, maybe ones I want to scrutinize, or just the really dumb ones. In Whomp's fortress, after completing the first star, a tower will be present at the top of the level. Hidden inside the tower, if you punch the wall, is a 1-up. Yeah, that's all this one is. Apparently a lot of players don't remember this existing or never got in the first place, so they use it as reasoning to their games being personalized and not containing it. One of the weakest ideas for a strange phenomenon in the game, since it's just a small thing some players missed, so it might not exist at all. Okay, I guess that's their logic. In Bob-omb Battlefield, after the player defeats King Bob-omb, the pink Bob-ombs will refer to him as a Big Dud. Coincidentally, starting from the second star onward, aka every star after the king has been defeated, there is a third rolling ball at the base of the mountain. These balls use the same texture as King Bob-omb, so a lot of people put 2 and 2 together and claim that after his defeat, the king was demoted to one of these, a Big Dud, no longer a bomb. This is one I actually believe in 100%. Hell, it's something I noticed when I was a little kid playing the game on DS and noticed the extra ball. Like, come on, this one isn't even that tricky to understand. Outside of the mansion in Big Boo's haunt, there's a sign that says, "You don't stand a ghost of a chance in this house. If you walk out of here, you deserve a Ghoul Medal." Given there is no Ghoul Medal in the game's files, this is seen as a play on the words Gold Medal by the translators. However, players associate this with anomalous behavior, tying it back to the March 1996 beta build where the Big Boo had a key that he would presumably drop on death. Some players say that the key would have either directly unlocked the supposed Ghoul Medal or was going to be replaced by it, or the other way around, with the key being the first and the medal replacing it. I do want to point out that in an early version of the game, this sign didn't even mention a Ghoul Medal, but instead said, "If you get out in one piece, you are unbelievable," making it pretty unlikely a Ghoul Medal was ever going to be in the game in the first place. Either way, an okay idea that just kind of overanalyzes a pun that was probably put there by an English translator. I'm also going to briefly mention Please Walk Quietly in the Hallway and Don't Become His Lunch, both of which are similar entries that tie back to in-game signs saying vague things that ultimately have no meaning in the game itself. Like I said, it's likely these phrases are just put there as world building or jokes by the designers, translators, whatever. I don't think they hold much weight to the game itself, but it's fun to look at them and wonder what they could mean. This one feels less like an anomalous report of weird behavior, more like a pretty agreeable headcanon. In the castle courtyard, the door has a noticeable chunk of black bricks surrounding it, leading some players to speculate that Bowser broke through the back door and was then quickly patched up with different bricks that were just laying around. This is one of those entries you can't disprove, but only because it would be stupid to actively try and do that, and also there's nothing in-game indicating Bowser did use the back door, so I don't know, you decide. Tell me in the comments if you think Bowser came in Peach's back door. Near the beginning of Cool Mountain is a cliff edge with a sign reading, "Warning, cold crevasse below." Similar to Ghoul Medal, this is more than likely wordplay due to the fact the player is right by a cliff and the level is called Cool Mountain. But several players claim that this is actually in reference to an earlier version of the level containing an area called Cold Crevasse. But as far as my research in the first part of the video could tell, there was never ever an early part of Cool Mountain that contained an area like this. However, I want to go over this entry because there's a bit more meat to it, as there are a few reports on the details behind it with some quote-unquote visual evidence, and by that I mean 2 of the 4 reports have videos tied to them. The 2 that don't have videos are just large chunks of text describing Cold Crevasse. The first one reads like a really bad creepypasta. I'm not going to read the whole thing, so I'll just summarize. A player fell off the level only to find a large, empty, snowy landscape. He heard the low health sound you hear when Mario's underwater and slowly made his way towards it, all while slowly losing health. When he got there, a bunch of grayed out baby penguins with black holes for eyes surrounded him and said, "All the players dropped us into the ravine. Join us, Mario. Be free, along with us, in heaven." Zoom into Mario supposedly smiling, the penguins turning into dust, and the Nintendo 64 turning itself off. What the hell was that? The second text entry report is apparently from a lost episode of some show called Video Game Sightings, which, surprise surprise, isn't a real TV show. The whole thing is really awkward to read since it's written like a real piece of paper transcript, but instead of just making like a physical piece of paper and taking a picture, they just described where certain parts were ripped off or covered in ink or whatever. The player fell off the cliff like the other report, but instead ended up in some mysterious snow maze where enemies kept disappearing. They found a house with a penguin behind it, talked to it, found something, then wandered around looking for a different something, found the place they needed to go, was told they were unworthy, and never touched the game again. Riveting! I know this section is already a little longer than the other anomalies, but we're gonna keep going because I now have videos to share. The first video comes from YouTuber Jefftastic, who, fun fact, is working on Nintendo 64 themed indie game, but I'm gonna talk about it a little later on. Okay, links in description anyways. Their Cold Crevasse video is unlisted, but it can be accessed from the MIPS whole wiki. This one is just genuinely cool, no pun intended, as it very accurately emulates a new area in Cool Mountain. And unlike both of the text entries, there's nothing super spooky throughout the majority of the video, meaning you can just enjoy it as a cool what-if scenario where this was a real level by Nintendo. The only parts I weren't a big fan of were at the very beginning and the end, where it was acting like something spooky was going to happen, and the description tries a bit too hard to scare you. But also, this is Editing Wizard coming in later. This is a part of a series of videos that I get into later, and I kind of skip over this one. You can still watch it if you want, but that's why there's spooky stuff at the beginning and end in the description and all that. And anyways, time for the second video. The second video isn't quite as good in my opinion, but it still loads better than the text entries. It's made by YouTuber First Name Last Name, which definitely won't be confusing to find if you search for it. Don't worry, I'll put a link in the description. And somewhat follows the same outline as the one by Jefftastic, with the player entering Cool Mountain and sliding down the cliff to find the crevasse. Although this one is trying a bit hard to be weird and spooky because they're playing as Luigi and there's a weird VHS filter on the screen. It's not my thing, but it's better than text entries. Like I said, both of these videos are way better than the text entries. I wish online unfiction projects like this lean more into the weird and speculative instead of trying to become creepypastas. I like the video by Jefftastic because it doesn't try so hard to scare you. It just feels weird and interesting because of how closely it resembles a level Nintendo themselves would have put in the game, without putting some dark twist on it. Alright, that's enough of me saying the word crevasse. This is a theory that suggests that every world inside of the paintings aren't actually literally in the paintings, but are out in the Mario universe somewhere, with the paintings being portals to them. The main proof of evidence is that Whomp's fortress returns in Mario Galaxy 2 under the name Throwback Galaxy. More proof is found with how some levels connect back to Peach's castle, such as Dire Docks having a hole that connects directly outside of the castle, and the level Wing Mario Over the Rainbow is somewhere above the castle. Similar to the Big Dud theory, this is one I just agree with fully, especially if you take stuff like Super Mario Odyssey into account, with how it has paintings that can be used to teleport to the different kingdoms. And it just kind of makes sense in the universe, with Koopa the Quick going from Bob-omb Battlefield to Tiny Huge Island. Forgive me if I'm incorrect about this one because I don't watch Oni plays, but here we go. The Bowser Room is a speculative phenomenon in which a new room is opened somewhere in the castle. The room is covered in white tiles and in most iterations has a single painting of Bowser on the wall, although it could also be a window or a monitor. The image was made by one of the Oni Plays members as a joke, and I kinda like it because it's just dumb and silly, and it's not trying to be scary, it's just... I like it. I don't know.
I printed that out and I brought it to school and I said, look, it's real. I can't believe I sent you that. Do you still have it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I vaguely say one of the members because, like I said, I don't watch Oni Plays, and even though I watched the original clip, I don't know who is who, so I can't place voices to names, so Oni said it. Jefftastic did make a video on it, where the room has a bit more meat on its bones in terms of visuals and an 8 red coin challenge, but similar to the previous Jefftastic video, it is unlisted, and also, like the previous one, Editor Wiz coming in, this was also part of the series that I cover later. So this is sort of an extension to the every copy is personalized theory, in that some players think the castle is a manifestation of the AI inside the game, as its internal architecture makes no real sense. You look at the size of the castle from the outside, it doesn't match up at all with how it should on the inside, with this video on screen showing what the castle should look like if all the rooms lined up with the exterior. This video is by YouTuber Skelix, by the way. This entry on its own isn't super interesting, but it does lead the way to some more entries, like Peach's castle only has 3 floors, the main ground floor, the second floor, and the third floor, along with the basement. But some supposed copies of Mario 64 contain a 4th floor. This 4th floor doesn't have a consistent appearance and is a direct byproduct of the theorized personalization AI and internal plexus. It's also inconsistent as to how you access it, as the AI has to deem you worthy, so only skilled players with advanced personalized copies can enter it. This one is a little more interesting to me than the others, because obviously yes it's fake, but the idea of a hidden chunk of the game that only skilled players can enter, maybe after beating Bowser the final time, is a neat idea. YouTuber Greenio, who we'll get back to later, made a video detailing what his 4th floor looks like and what it contains. The internal garden is a hidden garden found within the castle with the anomalous properties of calming the player down. Yeah, the main shtick of this place is it apparently just makes you feel calmer and happier, and it's unlocked if you're struggling in the game and need somewhere to calm down. Like, sarcasm aside, I like this. I really do like the entries that are about weird stuff, not spooky stuff. A stark contrast to the internal gardens being super chill and happy, we have the Eternal Fort. The scrapped final level, no it isn't, the Eternal Fort is only heard of through rumor and speculation, as if you play through it, it apparently fucks you up. That or Nintendo comes and kidnaps you or something. Something I don't get with some of these entries is the Nintendo taking away angle. Like, even if they did make this super advanced AI inside their game, why would they sell the game if they didn't want players finding some of the stuff the AI can make? Anyway, the Eternal Fort is super mysterious and secret, with Nintendo trying to keep it on the down low and under wraps because of some final secret the game has to offer in it. Anyone who has ever even seen it either talks very vaguely about it, brings it up in passing without much detail, or only talks about it in depth years after their experiences with it. One source shared the extracted music from the level, which is what you've been hearing for this section, by the way. Apparently, though, it can be dangerous to view the video or listen to the song, as Nintendo can come and take you away, so sorry for getting everyone here on Nintendo's hit list, I guess. This is genuinely one of the more worse ones to me, just because it's vague for vagueness' sake and doesn't have much agreed upon lore. You would think that'd lead to some interesting theories or takes, but alas, unless they're scattered across the internet on places I don't want to go like 4chan or dedicated Discord servers, there really isn't any kind of consistent lore to it, making the threatening vibes it's supposed to give off kind of fall flat. It's like being told a really bad creepypasta story all over again. If you go to the super secret level, Nintendo will come and get you, but nobody knows what it looks like or how to get into it because everyone who has seen it has already been gotten. Ooh. This theory claims that due to the anomalous nature of Super Mario 64 as a whole, many players will have shared subconscious experiences, like nightmares about the haunted piano, or the beta penguins that show up in some of Kellogg's old cereal promotions. This is what they look like, by the way. This one is nearly impossible to prove or disprove, as dreams are weird and difficult to explain, yada yada. It's entirely possible that players could have similar nightmares when they were younger. Hell, I remember being somewhat afraid of the piano when I played the DS remake as a kid. I don't think I had nightmares about it, but like, I remember being scared. I think this theory is also neat, as it's on the weirder side with shared dreams, but has a bit of that spooky factor, with some players saying you should wake yourself up immediately if you have one of those dreams, as it could lead to you being stuck in the nightmare forever. So for this, we need to explain Polybius and Lavender Town quick. Polybius is an urban legend dating back to the 80s and 90s. The story goes that in 1981, the CIA ran a secret project involving a video game called Polybius, planting arcade machines running it in Portland, Oregon. The game supposedly had psychoactive and addictive effects, similar to that of intense drug usage. All the while, CIA Men in Black type characters would survey the arcades, analyzing the effects Polybius had on players, as well as monitoring the arcade cabinets themselves. After some time had passed and the CIA had gotten the information they wanted, all arcade machines of Polybius were pulled from arcades and never seen again. Polybius is a long-standing and widely talked about conspiracy theory and more than worthy of a dedicated video, so I'll leave the story at that, and Lavender Town's mystery is in a similar vein of well-known speculation, but again, we'll go over it. In 1998, Pokemon Red and Blue released in America, and I'm not going over the history of Pokemon, you can't make me. All you need to know is there's a location of Pokemon Red and Blue called Lavender Town, which has many theories and creepypastas based on it, ranging from dead Pokemon inside the tower you visit in the game to the really dark one we're going to talk about. Quick warning, I will be going briefly into an uncomfortable topic for most people, that being suicide. It won't be long and I won't go in depth with it, but I need to at least mention it a bit as it's a part of the Lavender Town creepypasta and urban legend, so if you're uncomfortable with the topic at all, please skip to the timestamp on screen, alright? Lavender Town's most well-known urban legend is the music, an eerie tone that plays throughout the entire area. In the early 2010s, stories spread across the internet about how the music in the game caused Japanese children everywhere listening to it to commit suicide by the hundreds, as the music was said to give them major headaches and erratic behavior from the high-pitched notes. This was dubbed as Lavender Town Syndrome, a completely fictitious but nonetheless dark mental illness that would supposedly be the side effect of listening to the music for long periods of time. Some versions of the story state that the game's director, Satoshi Tajiri, wanted to make the music annoying to encourage players to leave the area quickly and not to intend harm. Other accounts claim he was working with the Japanese government to intentionally make music that would lead to the death of hundreds of Japanese children. Despite neither of these stories being true, Polybius never existed and Lavender Town's music never had any real psychological effects. Why do I bring up these seemingly unrelated urban legends in a Mario 64 video? Well, many claim that both Polybius and the Lavender Town stories are the result of Mario 64's anomalous nature, as Polybius's rumors began spreading around the late 90s and Pokemon Red and Blue released in 1998, only a couple of years after Mario 64's release date. It's also speculated that Nintendo themselves perpetrated the Polybius rumors, spreading them out so that the players wouldn't look into the strange properties of Super Mario 64, their big Nintendo 64 launch title. Honestly, if it's to be believed that Polybius did exist and the Mario 64 does have some dark underbelly, this wouldn't be that bad of a theory. It'd be a good way for Nintendo to cover their tracks, but why is Lavender Town roped into this when it released 2 years after Mario 64, so it would do a terrible job covering up Nintendo's tracks? And that's all I wanted to talk about on the Iceberg and on the Mipsel website as a whole, which is a shame. There's a lot of content on here, but most of it doesn't work for me because it attempts to be creepypasta fuel instead of an interesting story or something of pure creative passion. I don't think the people writing ghost stories about wide-eyed chain chomps or penguins sending Mario to heaven are doing it to write good stories. I think they're just trying to bait gullible kids and clickbait YouTubers. Or maybe they are passionate about their writing. Who knows? I'm just a skeptic with a YouTube channel. Criticize me. Now, with the iceberg out of the way, let's look at the cool fanworks that have come out in response to all this history and theories and legends and conspiracy and all that. Super Mario 64 Classified, or Greenio's Lost Tapes, as it's also been called, is a series made to tell a story around the concept of the AI in Super Mario 64 being alive, with 14 episodes split between 2 seasons, created by YouTuber Greenio, and after watching all 14 episodes, it's good. Just good. I know a lot of people really like it, evident by the view counts, but I didn't fall head over heels in love with it like a lot of other people did. I'm still going to recommend you check out the series yourself, as I'm not going to go in depth into every episode, just kind of talk about what I liked and didn't like overall. First off, the production quality across the whole series is fantastic, from the sound design to the actual layouts of the levels Greenio made for it. Similar to Jefftastic videos, when it wants to just show off a world in the game that's never been seen, you would be hard-pressed to not admit it looks authentic, like the snow level and early Bob-omb Battlefield in Season 2. For my first negatives, however, I don't think it's all that scary, Season 1 especially. Going into it, I assumed it was going to be more focused on trying to scare the viewer than anything else and not focus much on a story, and I was kinda right for the majority of Season 1. Up until Episode 5, none of them really feel like they're telling a super cohesive story or like they fit together in some overall plot at all. What doesn't help is every episode in the first season is named after the day it was filmed, so remembering specific details between videos is a bit tricky. A big issue I have is that if you're going to put the story in the backseat and focus on being really scary, you need to be really scary. Otherwise, it's hard for me to get invested. And unless you're really young or happen to find corrupted and glitchy Mario 64 to be scary, you're probably not going to get too spooked by it. Don't get me wrong, there is a story. and it does pick up in Season 2 and left me somewhat content with the end. But Season 1 tends to lean heavily on just showing you some weird visuals and cutting it off with error messages that probably have some secret message to them. But if you're using viewers decoding secret messages as a crutch instead of just putting the story in the videos themselves, that's kind of bad writing in my opinion. I understand the appeal of hiding a lot of your story in quick blink and you'll miss it messages, but when you have so little to pick apart in the rest of the video, it's not mysterious anymore, it's just annoying. Season 2 relied less on that and actually had a good amount of story told directly to the audience without relying on them being master code breakers. Season 2 also tended to be less focused on outright trying to scare you, but settled on more of an uneasy sense of dread, which totally complements the surreal visuals and level designs. There were multiple times where I could swear a jump scare was coming up, and then the video would just sit there and build tension for like a full minute before cutting it off or just letting it simmer. I wouldn't really call it scary, but just really tense and uneasy, which I'll take over bit-crushed error messages any day. Season 2 isn't perfect though, my biggest gripe being these animated segments. They're only in 2 episodes, but they really break the pacing and just feel off. I'm not talking about the visuals themselves, I know that's intentional they feel weird, but I mean the writing just doesn't fit for something like this. So like, these animated segments are from a canned Nintendo news show called Nintendo Mania, so you would assume that's written something like a Nintendo Direct sketch or maybe those Nintendo Week videos, but the writing doesn't feel like something they would make, even in the 90s.
We'll be looking over the hottest new video game releases. The Nintendo ones, I mean, you're not gonna see that blue mouse guy here.
The best analogy is that it feels something like a dorkly parody, but without any of the edge, and the voice for Mario doesn't help with that either. I can appreciate the effort gone into them, but they're just not my cup of tea and just break my attention away, which is a shame because the 2 episodes they're in, Promo Show and Epilogue, are really good otherwise. I'm also going to give them a slight pass because the last animated segment has a really nice heart-to-heart moment between Luigi and Mario.
Look, I can't do this without my brother. I don't know if it's the same for you, but somehow when you're not around, it's like I'm not around.
It's not much, but that little bit of emotion is appreciated. And finally, before moving on, let's talk about the story. I don't think I caught it all. So if what I can grasp is true, the video follows game developers Jim, Steve, and Bill, who are working for Nintendo to help make Super Mario 64. When it's revealed that Nintendo's demands and deadlines are too much for Jim and his team, Bill brings in some tech guys who can help by making an automatic enhancer, a game mechanic that'll automatically change parts of the game to make it run better. On the night this mechanic was set to be tested by Jim, he has a seizure, presumably from the enhancer affecting him.
Jim, are you alright?
Hey, Bill. What are you?
Steve, call an ambulance. I think Jim's had a seizure. Call an ambulance.
After that night, Jim began acting strange, trying to find something in the game and telling his coworkers about content he kept seeing in the game, content that he didn't recall himself or his team adding. When Bill and Steve start to catch on that the game is not what it seems, Jim takes the last few cartridges with the automatic enhancer left in them, destroys the enhancer, and seemingly disappears. It's also implied that the enhancer might be alive, or that someone was alive in it. I'm kind of grasping at straws here, as a lot of stories isn't told directly, especially in Season 1, but instead through stuff like deciphering messages on screen and other analog horror tropes, but I'm looking at these purely from the videos on their own. Maybe I missed something, it's probably likely I did, and I'm giving a completely wrong summary of what happened, but like I said, the production quality and ability to instill a great amount of dread is more than enough for me. I can look aside the story a bit because of how much it picks up in Season 2 in terms of quality. Are the videos good? Absolutely, but I don't think I'd recommend them if you're looking for straight up horror. If you want to watch a slow burn of a story following the mysteries of Mario 64, then give it a watch. It's about an hour and a half long in total, and Greenio has some other Mario 64 oddities on their channel that are worth a peek, but I'm not going to spoil them here. They also have a really well-made animated short that is completely disconnected from the Mario 64 Classified series, and I really recommend you watch it if none of the Mario 64 stuff interests you. Then again, if you weren't interested in Mario 64, why are you this far into a long video about it? I have no idea how long. My script says that this should be about the 30-minute mark, but that does not seem right since I added a whole bunch of stuff before writing that, and my audio recorder says I'm like an hour into recording the audio. I haven't taken out all the bad takes yet, so it's likely it's not an hour in. I hope we're not an hour in yet, are we? Oh boy. Back to some more familiar territory, here we have more videos by Jefftastic. Before we get into them, I want to take a second to highlight some of Jefftastic's non-Super Mario 64 work, so this is going to be quick, bear with me. Since as far back as August of 2023, Jefftastic and his team, Future Primitive, have been working on a video game titled Newman Network Channel 64, a revival of old-school 3D collectathons. What started as a fake game made for the Twitter account This Game Does Not Exist titled The Wonderful Newman, Newman Network has evolved into its own real game that looks really promising from what I've seen on the trailer, and a demo was even uploaded at the beginning of 2024. I've yet to play it, given I've been hard at work on this video right now, but I really do think you guys should give it a look if you like old school 3D platformers. I bring all this up before any of Jefftastic's Mario 64 content because I actually got into contact with Jefftastic asking why almost all of it had been unlisted. He told me he wants new viewers to check out the stuff he's more passionate in, like Newman Network, and wasn't proud of the videos he did on Super Mario 64, but was okay with me showcasing and discussing them. So since he gave me the go ahead to talk about his older work, I figured the polite thing to do would be to try and bring his passion project some attention, but I should get back to the topic of the video. On June 30th, 2020, Jefftastic began making videos showcasing anomalies he found on his father's old cartridge, starting with the first video, WEC Sighting and Other Anomalies. This one has no hesitation to it, and I love it. Starting out with bombarding the viewer with weird visuals of an orange fog and a strange rearrangement of the Super Mario Bros. Overworld theme, and within the first 20 seconds we see the titular Wide-Eye Chomp, shortened to WEC, as a sign of more anomalies to come. Compared to Classified, it's not trying as hard to be directly scary, which I like a lot, merely showing a bunch of weird stuff, cutting to him collecting a star, and then the game crashes. The second video is the previously mentioned Bowser Room Discovery, which I already covered a little bit, but not much goes on in it, so we have video 3, Flying Fortress, Whomp's Fortress Beta. As is tradition by now, Jefftastic has a great way of making fake levels look real with what appears to be an early version of Whomp's Fortress, which is devoid of all Whomps but one, the King Whomp, who has new dialogue implying he's being forced to fight Mario because of Bowser, tries to be spooky by having the text glitch out when you defeat him, and then has some really good dialogue from the game after he goes back and collects his 8th star. Cutting off before you can see what has changed. It's a really good cliffhanger and adds mystery without just keeping information away from the viewer. The castle has changed. Who knows what it can mean? Well, we can know because it's in the next video. Video 4, Castle Garden and Dark Room, starts with Jefftastic attempting to enter the castle courtyard only to wind up in the castle garden, not to be confused with the internal garden, keep up here. I wish this area was real, it feels so cozy with the nice sunset and flower beds. That is, until he enters the titular Dark Room, and my usual praise for Jefftastic is lessened a bit with this kind of on-the-nose dialogue from Toad about everybody in the castle being stuffed in the walls and dying. I like how it acknowledges he's screwing around and not doing the main game, but seeing Toad say, "Please don't let me die," is a bit much and not in a good way. I can appreciate it though, since it's a reference to a theory on Mipsol, but it's still written a bit clunkily. It also just abruptly ends after that when the game crashes from Jefftastic trying to go through the door behind Toad. Video 5, Delicious Cake, has Jefftastic going back in the dark room and finding Toad replaced with brick blocks that he promptly destroys. This kind of retroactively makes the "we're trapped in the walls" line work a bit better for me, implying that Jefftastic is taking so long to save the day, the Toads are actively turning into parts of the level, which makes it a little morbid that he just destroyed it without a second thought. Like, Jesus, Jeff. Behind the door that crashed last time, he finds a level comprised of a giant cake, and upon entering the level, he gets a message from Peach. It's kind of sad in the context of the game, but I can't help that I lost it and chuckled a little at, "There's a problem. I'm stuck in the walls." Like, I'm sorry, my humor's broken. This made me laugh. After collecting the star atop the cake, Jefftastic then gets a message from the game's AI, who looks like Mario but with no eyes and yellow overalls, telling him that they can have cake forever, and pleading for Jefftastic to speak to him and not turn the game off. He turns the game off. The next video Mario update is recorded IRL, with Jefftastic showing his Mario 64 cartridge won't even turn on anymore after the events of Delicious Cake, and that he needs to get a new one. Return of the White-Eyed Chomp. Jefftastic has ordered a brand new sealed copy, playing the game normally and collecting the stars in Bob-omb Battlefield. That is, until he selects the 3rd star and is greeted by the WEC. Back in the first video with him, the sign in front of him said, "Your fear is justified" at the end, but this time it says, "You already knew this though." It cuts to him collecting the star behind the chain chomp and returning to the castle, but noticeably the music is absent. He also mentions in the description that even though this is a new unopened copy of the game, it somehow remembers what happened in the last copy. Aquarium Limbo is next, and I'm sorry it's a nitpick, but I wish the music was still gone to make it directly connected. He tries to re-enter the Bowser room like he did on the older cartridge, but instead ends up in the secret aquarium level, but this time without any of the red coins there, forced to slowly drown and crash the game again. After restarting the console, he tries to enter it again, but this time the warp won't work at all. A simple one. I like it. Got some good tension there, expecting some big jump scare or something, like, I don't know, the concept of Mario drowning is a good one. Even Classified did it. Next up is the Cold Color Crevasse one, but again, we already took a peek, so on to the video after that. Deep, Deep Slumber. It starts off with an image of what could be the castle, but it's unclear, while strange music plays. Did I say strange? I meant funky. While Jefftastic is asleep, the AI begins talking to us, the viewer, about how Jeff is afraid and paranoid, before cutting to rapidly cycling screenshots of a level that's never been shown before, ending on an image of Mario staring at the sun. Between the Cold Crevasse video and this one is a video of Jefftastic trying to get the old cartridge fixed before images of locations from previous videos flash on screen, followed by the message, sleep well. Although this video has been set to private at some point, instead of just unlisted, so I can only share the description provided by Mipshole. Lastly, in the Jefftastic series, we have Super Mario 64 promo. It starts off with a recorded commercial of the game, which I'm being honest when I say this fake commercial blows fake commercial from Classified out of the water. It even has a cheesy 90s white person's rap.
Guys like the princess and slave king king. Exploring this world, it's really cool. Nintendo 64 really rules.
It cuts off to an image of another level we've yet to see saying, "Look for the 5 stars and you are not worthy." That is all of the videos, and it's unclear what the story is or the outcome of Jeff in the context of these videos. Sometime after this was uploaded, Jefftastic began working on a ROM hack for Super Mario 64 subtitled Warped Worlds, but this was cancelled in March of 2021 following some internal conflict and people leaking unfinished builds. From what I can gather, this was supposed to be sort of a continuation of the series as the videos left off on a cliffhanger, and since Jefftastic has long since stopped working on anything related to Super Mario 64, we can only speculate on what was going to happen. Another series of videos outside of Greenio and Jefftastic includes the work of Black Joystick. Another YouTuber at one point in time had documented many of his findings of Mario 64's anomalies. Sadly, similar to Jefftastic, Black Joystick seems to have scrubbed all Mario 64 videos off his channel, setting them to private so links don't even work anymore, and there doesn't seem to be any way of getting into solid contact with him. The only evidence of these videos existing in the first place are descriptions on the Mipshole wiki. Reading a bunch of wiki articles verbatim would be boring though, so I'll leave a link if anyone wants to give them a read. It's a shame though, because reading some of these descriptions leads me to think it could have been another Jefftastic. Just some really neat and surreal videos showing off weird levels, such as ones detailing the 4th floor and 2nd basement, or a Bowser level that is completely randomized and made from chunks of other levels. Although Black Joystick's videos are effectively lost media, I did stumble upon a new channel that covers Mario 64's anomalous weirdness stuff. And when I say stumbled upon, I mean it. I was watching YouTube casually and then this video appeared on my front page. The channel is called 95 to 96 Archives, and seems to follow a similar route of the other channels of just doing random reports on anomalies. This one is also the newest attempt as far as I'm aware, as the channel was only made on October of 2023 and only has 9 videos under his belt. So how are the videos themselves? When watching through them myself, I can't tell if they're just really self-aware parodies, or just an amateur's attempt at horror. Don't take that as an insult though. If this is their first attempt at this, I'd say it was pretty good overall. Given the effort that it takes into editing the Mario 64 ROM in the first place to achieve this look and feel, I can't say they're low quality, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat it for being a first attempt. It can be a bit over-edited, like cranking up the VHS filter, and uses the game crashing to an error screen a bit too much, but I still think they're worth checking out if you want a little more anomalous content, so I'll leave a link to the channel in the description. Who knows, if this is a younger or inexperienced creator trying their hand at something new, maybe down the line they'll use it as a positive learning experience for future projects, so it might be worth it to keep an eye on this channel for that reason alone. At the end of the day, the biggest drawback all of these videos have is that you just watch them. You can't play the experiences that they're showing off, whether it's official beta footage or the weird spooky stuff. That's where I'm actually wrong, because there are some beta recreations, those being the Preservation Project and B3313. Both of these hacks aim to recreate the Space World 95 demo, although one tries a little hard to be accurate, but let's not worry about that yet. The first one is the Preservation Project. The Preservation Project was created by Fluvian and Mario Nova, and as said before, it aims to recreate the Space World 95 demo as closely as possible, and I gotta give them credit, it does just that. The physics seem similar to the footage we've seen, all the notable level differences are here, and it has the general feeling of uneasy surrealism. It's not scary, but as someone who has played Super Mario 64 for a very long time and knows the majority of the game like the back of his hand, I won't say I wasn't put off a bit by some of this. Just a bit though, as the charm of how the game used to look and feel weighed out that weird feeling I got. Judging by the little amount of stars, it'd probably only take you an hour or so to beat it 100%, but it still serves as a really cool way of preserving Mario 64's history, albeit in an unofficial way. Until Nintendo releases the Space World beta themselves, which is never going to happen, this is the next best way to transfer yourself back to that event in 1995. The next ROM hack, on the other hand, dares to try and give the players a more interesting playthrough. B3313, aka Build 3313, created by Chris Arlillo and a lengthy team of other developers on screen now, is a ROM hack that on the surface appears to be doing the same thing as the Preservation Project was doing, but seemingly translated to English. If you enter the castle, it starts off with the same 4 levels, plus the Bowser fight. However, after defeating Bowser and obtaining his strange red star, or if you skip the castle and try exploring more outside, you'll soon encounter strange new areas that range from emulating the rest of the game's happy-go-lucky feel to ones that genuinely put me on edge. I think I was right in my thought process of this being more effective when playable, as I genuinely found myself tensing up at times. And it's stupid because, it's still Super Mario 64, a game I know front to back. But in knowing it so intensely, that makes the tense sections even more effective. Entering this weird dried up version of Wet Dry World with its long corridor at the beginning and music that I can't quite put my finger on being a remix of a track already in the game or something completely new, this place honestly freaked me out a bit on my first attempt. There's some story being told here that I'm glossing over and probably not understanding, but I don't care that much because I'm so much more interested in the strange new version of Mario 64 I get to play. So much of the strange castle is just open to you at all times, leading to a lot of discoveries that could potentially be made. The more I looked around, the more I thought I knew what was going to happen next or what was actually going on, only to get flashbanged by something completely out of left field. It's not perfect, as sometimes it can feel a little too aimless and vague, and the controls aren't great, as it still uses slightly jank ones from the Space World beta, but I highly recommend you give it a try, because out of nearly everything else I've shown off today, this is the one you want to know as little about before going into it. The clips I've been showing are only a portion of what I all encountered while playing, so with all this out of the way, the official history, the weird wikis, the strange experiences, both interactive and not, why? There's still some questions I want to ask before ending this video, starting with, why do people find this weird Super Mario 64 stuff interesting? Which I'll then reiterate into a more personal one that can serve as a way for me to explain why I made this video. Why do I find this stuff interesting? Well, for one, I love the game. I've been playing Super Mario 64 for about as long as I can remember, whether it was the DS port on my older sister's DS before I got my own and played it to death there, emulating the original on Raspberry Pi, or playing the fan-made PC port with friends. Super Mario 64 is an enduring classic that I think will genuinely never be forgotten at all, and I know I'm going to keep coming back to it. The thing with it is nearly everyone has played or seen it in some sort of capacity. Sure, a lot of people have played a Super Mario game of some kind, but almost everyone I know or have ever met knows what Mario 64 is, whether they've played it themselves or have seen it somewhere. Second reason I find this stuff interesting is the story potential. Similar to online unfiction works like The Sun Vanished, or major community-ran writing projects like the SCP Foundation, the personalized Mario 64 story can be taken into so many different directions given the premise of a widely popular game changing itself to fit the writer. Bit of a shame, most of the stories being told right now focus more on trying to scare people rather than tell an interesting story, but I'm sure as time moves on, people will take the base of the Mipsol wiki and turn it into something really special. Oh yeah, and as to why I made this video, well, it circles back to B3313 of all things, and Siva Gunner. Background: late November of 2023, my video editing laptop died due to a fried motherboard. From early December to almost February, I had to use an old junk laptop that struggled to play anything more advanced than Minecraft with Optifine. During that time, I decided I should probably at least figure out my next video and write it, and this is when I opened YouTube and saw a video by Siva Gunner for a game called B3313. For those who don't know, Siva Gunner is a channel that uploads video game music, called rips, that have been edited with some joke. It's actually much more complicated than that, but an oral history of the Siva Gunner channel and its lore is too dense for this video, so we'll leave it at that. The video I saw was titled Ultramarine Stronghold Super Mario 64 Build 3313. Curiously, I clicked on it, and although I didn't catch the joke in the song, I was intrigued by what the title meant, so I googled B3313, which led me to the ROM hack, which led me to being curious about what the Space World beta of the game was actually like, and if it was actually this weird, which led me to the cutting room floor and Mipsol, which then led me to saying, okay, my brain has latched on to this idea, we're making a video, and that's how this all started. An edited song uploaded to a joke channel originating from a video game beta that isn't real, based off of urban legends on the internet, which are based off of the very little knowledge that was available of Mario 64's development history. It's kind of interesting that the path I took in discovering all this mirrors the path this video takes to explain it all, but blah blah blah, it's like poetry, it rhymes sometimes. L is real. Cut to the final question. Was this worth it? Was it worth the multiple rabbit holes I went down, the misinformation spread around the internet about the game, the absolute insanity I had in confirming if these 2 articles were even real because the website doesn't source them at all, and I had to contact TCRF's Discord, and then they told me to remove the interviews from the development page, but then more people came in saying they could find the interviews, and then they probably found one, but it's not completely confirmed, and oh god, this gave me a headache, but yes, it was worth it. I don't have a deep message hiding at the end of the video. I'm just having a sincere admission that I had fun researching this topic, and hope that you had fun watching me talk about it for however long this video ends up being. The script is pretty long, so I imagine at least like 45 minutes, but it's probably going to be more. Doesn't matter. I had fun. See you in the next one, folks. I really hope I edit the credits to be at least somewhat visually interesting so that people get the proper, information. I'm gonna talk a little over the credits, I guess. I don't have much more to say. This video was just fun to make and research, and I should probably figure out what the next one's gonna make. My boyfriend wants to do a video where him and I rank the TF2 mercenaries on how gay they are, and I told him we could, but I'm contemplating if it's gonna be a main channel or a side channel. If you made it this far and you're that interested in that video, you can tell me in the comments. I doubt it. I don't know how many people are actually interested in that, so that's why I'm contemplating where it goes. Other videos that I have planned. That Garfield one that I recorded all the footage of and started a script of, I should actually probably finish at some point. I would get back into Doctor Who, so I could do a video on that if people really wanted to see it. Hell, maybe another really long and drawn out Minecraft video. Haven't done one of those in a while. Stretch. My back popped. Maybe I could talk about Stanley Parable again.